Something is fundamentally wrong in Washington. You can feel it. A power struggle is breaking apart, and the pieces, they're falling into a pattern that history warns us is absolutely fatal.
And right now, let's be clear, fear is the only currency on Capitol Hill. Strategy? It's completely collapsing.
So just picture this. Speaker Mike Johnson pacing anxiously through the halls of Congress. At that same moment, inside the Supreme Court, the gavel slams down. The ruling is direct, it's unambiguous. The administration's entire tariff regime is unlawful. A hard line has just been drawn.
But President Donald Trump, he doesn't just ignore the court, he attacks it. Just hours later, he goes and unilaterally imposes a brand new 15% tariff on the world. This just turned a legal fight into a full-blown global confrontation.
And the fallout? It's immediate. Markets are trembling. The European Parliament instantly freezes all trade talks. And then, in a diplomatic slap in the face that we've just never seen before, France effectively declares the U.S. Ambassador, Charles Kushner, persona non grata. He's banned.
Look, this isn't just random chaos. These are signals. And they're revealing a pattern that has nothing to do with day-to-day politics and has everything to do with the very structural integrity of power itself.
Now, to really get what's happening, we have to go back. Way back, like 500 years. Niccolo Machiavelli, the original master student of power, he warned that empires don't just collapse in some big, loud explosion. No, they decay. And they do it in predictable phases.
He actually had a name for this process, imperial fracture. And here is the great paradox, the thing you have to understand. What looks like a bold, powerful show of strength, defying courts, taking on allies, is almost always the very first symptom of a fatal structural weakness.
Machiavelli laid out 3 very distinct phases of this decay. So, phase 1, a ruler starts to really push against the limits of their own power. Phase 2, the story they're telling, their narrative, it begins to completely break from reality. And then phase 3, allies, both here and abroad, start to just silently pull their support. And I'm telling you, once you see this framework, you will see it everywhere, in the crisis we're watching unfold today.
Okay, so let's apply this framework. Let's map it directly onto the events that are happening right now on Capitol Hill and see how each signal fits perfectly into a phase of decay. Just look at how cleanly these signals align. Donald Trump defying the Supreme Court? That's a textbook confrontation with limits. The Pentagon warning against an unsupported invasion of Iran? That shows deep institutional strain. The U.S. women's hockey team refusing to even visit the White House? That's cultural resistance. And France banning Ambassador Charles Kushner? Well, that is a stark, undeniable alienation of allies. The fracture isn't just in one place, it is happening everywhere all at once.
And this decay? It's becoming visible right here at home. A brand new CNN poll shows Donald Trump's support among independent voters has absolutely collapsed to just 26%. You see, Machiavelli taught that power isn't just about command, it's about consent. And right now, consent is just evaporating.
I mean, even the leader's own staunchest ideological allies are sounding the alarm. When a Fox News commentator like Andy McCarthy calls the attacks on the Supreme Court an unmitigated disgrace, that's a huge signal that the very foundation of support is cracking from the inside.
And here's phase 2, right in front of our eyes, narrative distortion. As the reality on the ground gets weaker, the projections of strength get louder and louder. You hear promises of $5,000 checks that experts say can never, ever arrive. It's an old playbook. Project supreme confidence even as the ground beneath your feet is crumbling into bankruptcy.
And this brings us to the most dangerous phase of all, the escalation loop. See, when defiance is met with resistance, power doesn't back down, it doubles down. And that creates this vicious feedback loop with absolutely devastating consequences.
This escalation, it kicks off a chain reaction. First, you get the legal shift. The rule of law stops being a boundary and becomes more of a suggestion. Then, you get the ally shift. Partners don't declare war, they just stop answering the phone. And finally, the internal shift. Loyalty becomes the only thing that matters, forcing everybody to pick a side, which completely fractures cohesion.
This is the feedback loop from hell. Exclusion forces louder, more extreme rhetoric. And that rhetoric, in turn, just speeds up the exclusion. It's a spiral, and it only goes in one direction, down.
So, as the outside world gets more and more hostile, the inner circle shrinks. Power gets concentrated into fewer and fewer hands. But here's the danger. A court without critics is a court without warnings. And the risk of a catastrophic miscalculation, it just skyrockets.
And this all leads to Machiavelli's darkest warning. He said a ruler can survive hatred. You can fight hatred, but what you cannot survive is contempt, because contempt is silent. It grows from instability and broken promises. It doesn't fight you. It just quietly walks away.
So, where does this all end? Well, history shows us that when a system gets to this point of decay, there are really only 3 paths left, and every single one of them is dangerous.
Path 1 is institutional containment. This is where the system itself fights back. Congress, the courts, the allies, they all hold the line, forcing a big confrontation just to preserve order. But this path requires a leader to actually concede power, which is something a psychology of pure excavation just cannot do.
Path 2 is continued confrontation. The leader just keeps doubling down, feeding that downward spiral. Legal battles get more intense, markets swing wildly, and international isolation becomes permanent. The nation itself basically becomes a rogue state.
And then there's path 3, internal rupture. And this is the most dangerous path of all. This is when the pressure becomes so great that loyalty itself just collapses. The leader's own allies start to break away, not because of principle, but purely for their own political survival. See, an enemy on the outside is one thing, betrayal from within, that's checkmate. You know, these aren't just headlines anymore. They're symptoms. The pacing footsteps of Speaker Mike Johnson, abandoned ambassador, a general's public warning, a trembling market, a defied court, a protesting sports team, dissent on a friendly network. Each one is a clear indicator of a system under immense, maybe even unbearable pressure. Machiavelli's final warning was this: when these disorders are seen early, they can be cured, but when they are ignored until everyone can see them, they become fatal. And we are seeing them now, all of us. The question is no longer if the empire is fracturing, but how it will break. The world is about to find out what happens when the center cannot hold.